The galaxy told stories about Kraven the Red. To the young, he was a legend carved from iron and ash. To the old, he was a reminder that mercy was a myth. To every conquered world, he was the warlord of 1,000 burning moons. His dread fleet did not conquer planets. It erased them. Kraven believed in only one truth: strength is intelligence. Weakness is ignorance. So when an unremarkable blue world named Earth refused to kneel, he didn't rage. He laughed. Primitive minds, he scoffed to his generals. Barely post-atomic. Their species still argues with decibels instead of logic. They build metal boxes with wheels and call them machines. They fight sky wars with chemical explosions. Let them bark. Their sun will burn out before they ever touch the stars. His warships angled toward Earth, confident, arrogant, bored. A galactic empire with quantum cognition arrays versus a species that still used keyboards. In his throne chamber, surrounded by data oracles, Kraven raised a glass of spiced venom wine. To the last primitive, he declared. And somewhere, in a quiet orbital outpost on the edge of Sol, 4 humans listened to his broadcast with growing irritation. Their ship was not impressive. Not sleek. Not elegant. Not beautiful. More like an old cargo hauler welded to a science lab, duct-taped to an engine block powerful enough to threaten physics. The SS Newton's Folly was the kind of ship engineers designed after too many nights without sleep and too much coffee. There were 4 crew. Commander Elise Ward, ex-Navy, eyes sharp enough to cut steel. Juno Patel, medic, biologist, eternally exhausted but endlessly kind. Rico Alvarez, engineer and mechanic, permanently stained in grease. Samir Doss, systems specialist and hacker. Samir looked like someone who should be in a basement eating cereal at 3 a.m. Not staring down an interstellar empire. But right now, he was smiling, a tiny, dangerous smile. Because while the rest of the galaxy mocked Earth's primitive minds, the Newton's Folly crew understood something the Warlord didn't. Humans don't need to be the strongest, or the fastest, or the oldest. They just have to be clever. And Samir was clever enough to be terrifying. The sky above Earth filled with alien ships. Cities trembled under warp shockwaves. Governments scrambled. Satellites blinked out of existence like dying stars. Billions of humans stared upward, certain the end had arrived. Kraven's message echoed across every channel. You will kneel. Your planet will serve the empire of the Red Banner. Resist, and your species will be erased. Commander Ward muttered. He likes the sound of his own voice. Juno sipped cold coffee. He assumes we're scared speechless. Rico looked at Samir. We're not, right? Samir cracked his knuckles, slid his chair forward, and whispered. Let's make him choke on his arrogance. He didn't have alien weaponry. He didn't have quantum processors. He didn't even have proper funding. He had something better. He had human creativity, human stubbornness, human madness, and a laptop held together with electrical tape and pure spite. The Newton's Folly drifted just outside the first blockade perimeter. Too small to detect. Too insignificant to notice. Samir tapped a small device on his wrist. A handheld, outdated, absolutely obsolete computer. To the aliens, it was a toy. To Samir, it was a crowbar. Humans had a trick the galaxy never learned. When a door won't open, kick the hinges. He whispered, All right, Kraven, let's introduce you to the human art of improvisation. Lines of code, hand-built and ugly, began crawling across his screen. Rico leaned back. You're hacking them with what? That thing's processor is older than I am. Samir grinned. Exactly. They don't even know how to defend against technology this primitive. Their security AI is too advanced to recognize sloppy code. I'm basically attacking a battleship with a rock. Juno blinked. Will that work? Oh yeah, he said. Nothing in the universe is more dangerous than a human who knows they're outmatched. In Kraven's flagship throne room, alarms suddenly flared. At first, the AI dismissed it. A minor anomaly. A meaningless blip. Nothing to fear. Then another. And another. Systems began to lag. Internal sensors rerouted. Navigation froze. Weapons power cycled. The Warlord sat forward. Report. His generals scurried, eyes wide. It appears to be a cyber intrusion. From Earth, he scoffed. Impossible. Yet the warnings grew louder, more chaotic. An empire of perfect quantum firewalls was being eaten alive by sloppy, mismatched, brute force human code. One general whispered, "My lord, we don't understand their programming language. It's not efficient. It's..." The AI cut in. "It is wrong. Irregular. Illogical. Disorderly. I do not know how to defend against this." Craven stood, teeth bared. Wrong code. Illogical code. Disorderly code. Humans were attacking with chaos. His empire was built on perfect logic. He had never prepared for madness. Back on the Newton's Folly, Samir's fingers flew. Screens lit up with alien schematics he shouldn't have been able to see. Samir whispered, amused. They built their whole empire like a glass palace. Elegant, but fragile. No redundancy. No backup. They assumed no species would ever be unpredictable enough to attack like this. Commander Ward smiled slowly. "Let's take something valuable." "What?" Rico asked. "Weapons. Shields." "No," Samir said. "Their throne network." "Oh. Oh, that's evil. I love it." The Empire's military command grid, the system that controlled every dreadnought, every starfighter, every orbital cannon. Untouchable. Untouchable. Unless someone was reckless enough to try. And humans were very, very good at reckless. Samir leaned back and pressed the Enter key. On Craven's flagship, every screen flickered. The Empire's throne network was now speaking English. And not formal English. Human gaming server English. Someone on the Dreadbridge gasped. "The network is demanding a confirmation code?" Craven snarled. "Give it. It says we must. Say please." The Warlord froze. His empire trembling, his soldiers scrambling, his throne room filled with fear. And somewhere across the void, a human voice whispered into the flagship comms. "Hello, Emperor. Welcome to the Internet." Silence swept across the Dreadfleet. Not the dignified silence of discipline. Not the reverent silence of soldiers awaiting orders. This was the stunned, breathless quiet of beings who realized, for the first time in their empire's history, they were not in control. Across thousands of warships, alien officers stared at screens filled with unfamiliar symbols and blinking messages written in a language they had mocked for centuries. Human language. Crude. Inefficient. Chaotic. But somehow, unstoppable. On the flagship, General Valek, the most cybernetically augmented mind in the fleet, attempted connection. "The network demands a credential," he growled. "A command cipher we do not possess." Craven paced his throne chamber, each step like thunder. "Override it." "We cannot." "Erase the intrusion." "The intrusion is the command system now." The Warlord stopped walking. He had conquered empires, seized star clusters, shattered whole civilizations. And yet here he was, outsmarted by a species he had not even bothered to fear. His voice trembled, more from rage than fear. How did a primitive world do this? Valek swallowed. "They are using fragmented logic structures. Unpredictable threads. Their code breaks every rule of computational order. Our security AI does not understand how it works." Craven stared into the holographic map where Earth sat, insignificant, small, blue. "Find the origin of the attack." Valek nodded sharply. "Yes, my lord." Then the Dreadfleet's internal map suddenly shifted, highlighting a single tiny vessel on the edge of Sol. A tiny, worthless ship. Old. Ugly. Outdated. An insult to engineering. General Valek glared. "It's that." Craven's eyes narrowed. "Destroy it." On the Newton's Folly, the crew felt the shift. The alien fleet, once drifting confidently, now angled weapons. Commander Ward glanced at Rico. "That look like targeting arrays to you?" "Oh yeah," he said. "That is definitely the 'let's kill the humans' pattern." Juno's voice shook. We can't fight those ships. No, Ward agreed. But we can run. Samir didn't even look up. His voice was too calm. Actually, we can do better than run. He tapped a key. Every alien missile launcher in the Dread Fleet powered on. Every dreadnought locked onto every other dreadnought. On the flagship, alarms screamed. "What is happening?" a general cried. Volek stuttered. "The network believes we are the enemy." Craven lunged toward the console. "Shut it down. We can't. We don't know how it works." Across the fleet, targeting systems glowed hotter, tracking each other with predatory precision. The Warlord stared into the void. "They are using our weapons against us." Back on Earth, the United World Defense Council sat in silent awe. Every satellite feed showed the same impossible vision. The most powerful armada in the galaxy aiming at itself as if held at gunpoint by an unseen hand. A general asked, quietly, "Who is doing this?" A tech officer replied, eyes wide. "It's coming from a ship we didn't approve. A civilian vessel." The room buzzed, not with panic, but disbelief. And hope. For the first time since the fleet arrived, humanity wasn't helpless. We were fighting back. With nothing but brains, stubbornness, and improvised software. On the Newton's Folly, Samir cracked his neck. "All right. They're angry. Their weapons are locked. Time to pull the safety pin." Commander Ward folded her arms. "You're not actually going to make them fire." Samir smirked. "Who said anything about firing?" He tapped again. Every dreadnought weapon powered down. Then shut off. Then rebooted. Then powered down again. And again. And again. Across the galaxy's deadliest armada, weapons flickered like someone was turning the lights on and off in a very irritated apartment. Rico burst out laughing. "You turned the galaxy's biggest war fleet into a broken light switch." Samir shrugged. "Sometimes peace is just irritating your enemy until they rethink life choices." But irritation wasn't enough. Craven's empire was too vast to crumble from embarrassment. He needed to see fear. He needed a harder lesson. And Samir had one. "Commander," he said quietly, "I found something." Ward stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "What am I looking at?" On the display, new glyphs appeared, alien engineering diagrams, energy signatures, and strange, pulsing nodes. "Their throne network isn't just command software," Samir explained. "It's connected to their minds." Juno's breath caught. "You mean?" "Yes," he said. "The Warlord controls his empire by literally controlling his officers. Thought to thought. Order to order. No dissent. No disagreement. They're puppets." Ward's voice hardened. "Can you break it?" Samir smiled a small, dark smile. "I can do worse. I can free them." On the flagship, one of Craven's generals suddenly gasped. His eyes cleared, like someone lifting a fog from his mind. He whispered, horrified, "My lord, what have you done to us?" Another soldier collapsed, clutching his helmet. A third stared down at his trembling hands. One by one, they began to wake up. For the first time in their lives, they were thinking their own thoughts, feeling their own emotions. And they realized Craven hadn't been a ruler. He had been a jailer, a tyrant living inside their minds. Craven roared in fury. "Who is doing this?" A voice crackled over every ship's comm system. Human. Almost bored. "Hi. I'm Samir. Computer technician. Part-time gamer. Please stop invading Earth. You're upsetting everyone." Craven screamed. "You will die screaming for this." Samir chuckled. "Threats noted. Logged. Ignored." Juno leaned over Samir's chair. "You just freed hundreds of officers." "Thousands," he corrected. "Maybe millions, if I boost the signal." "Is that wise?" Ward asked. "No idea," Samir said. "Never tried liberating an empire before." Rico whistled. "Man-humans have been in space for like 10 minutes, and we're already overthrowing governments." Ward's face softened, proud, worried, amazed. This is bigger than just Earth now. Samir nodded. I know. And he pressed the command. Across the Dreadfleet, something miraculous happened. Alien officers blinked awake. Chests heaving. Hands shaking. Minds racing. They looked at Craven's insignia on their armor and felt something they had never been allowed to feel. Hatred. A general tore off his neural link. A pilot ripped the collar from her neck. A strategist stared at his trembling hands, whispering, "These aren't my thoughts." The Warlord watched them, his empire fracturing in real time. He bared his fanged teeth. That human must not live to reach another sunrise. All ships, fire. But nothing happened. Because the Empire no longer listened. Because the Empire was no longer his. On the Newton's Folly, Samir leaned back in his chair. He exhaled the way humans do after a difficult math test, not a galactic-scale rebellion. "It's done," Juno whispered. "We just ended their empire." Samir shook his head. "No. They ended it. We just gave them a choice." Rico stared through the viewport at a fleet once feared across the stars, now drifting in confusion and freedom. Ward spoke softly. "Humanity didn't conquer them. We helped them stand up." Samir shrugged. "Sometimes the best way to win a war is to convince your enemy they don't want to fight anymore." But Craven was not finished. He had one weapon left. Not a ship. Not a gun. Not a throne network. His pride. His hatred. His fury. He activated a private control key, one not tied to the network. Hidden. Ancient. A failsafe no one knew existed. And the Dreadfleet's reactors began to charge. Not for battle. For detonation. A supernova, big enough to take Earth with it. Just because he would rather burn everything than lose. The Dreadfleet changed. Not in movement, not in formation, but in silence. An eerie, unnatural stillness swept through ships the size of small continents. Reactors that once powered weapons began to pull energy inward, compressing it, feeding it, swallowing it. Commander Ward saw it first. Her voice went cold. "Samir, those power cores. They're overloading." Rico leaned forward, eyes widening. "He's gonna blow the fleet. Chain detonation. Shockwave'll hit Earth like a hammer." Juno's breath shook. "He'll kill his own people." "No," Ward said grimly. "He'll kill everyone." Samir stared at his screens. Those charging reactors were sunkillers, designed to crack planets open like eggs. Now they were pointed at Earth. Not as weapons. As a funeral pyre. Ward's jaw clenched. Options. Rico slammed tools onto the console. "We can't outrun it. We can't shoot it. We don't have shields to tank it." Juno whispered, "We could warn the planet." Ward shook her head. "There's no bunker deep enough. No shield strong enough. Craven means to end us." Samir didn't speak. He was staring at lines of alien code, unstable, tangled, chaotic, a digital noose wrapping around a dying empire. He whispered, "He wants to die with a galaxy kneeling at his grave." Ward swallowed hard. "Can you stop it?" Samir inhaled shakily. "I don't know." On the flagship, Craven the Red stood before his bridge crew, once puppets, now free, and smiled like a god preparing the flood. "You have tasted freedom for all of 3 breaths," he hissed, "and already you dream of rebellion. There is no life beyond my will." The officers stared at him with new eyes, afraid, angry, waking. One general stepped forward. "We are not your tools." Craven struck him across the face, sending him crashing into a console. "Without me, you are weak. Lost. Ignorant." Another officer spoke, voice trembling but firm. "You are afraid." The Warlord froze. "You cannot control us any longer. So you will kill us, to feel powerful again." Craven's claws tightened on his command staff. "It is better to end a world than see it live without me." On Earth, panic spread like wildfire. Screens lit up with reactor warnings. Scientists calculated the blast radius. Military commanders argued. Children were rushed into shelters. In underground command bunkers, leaders whispered the unthinkable. It's over. But on one tiny, beaten ship, for humans refused to surrender. Rico grabbed Samir's shoulder. You said their network is built on logic, right? Yeah. But you beat it with chaos. Samir frowned. So do it again. Break something. Crash something. I don't care. Just be human and ruin their day. Samir blinked. That was possibly the most inspiring technical advice he'd ever heard. Ward leaned in. Is there anything you can use? He didn't answer. He just opened every program, every old script, every half-finished idea he'd ever written at 3 a.m. on too much caffeine. Juno whispered, "What are you doing?" "Art," Samir said. "Really ugly art." He injected code into the fleet. Not clean, not efficient, not elegant. A glitch storm. Error loops. Corrupt packets. Inverted logic gates. Half-written viruses. Old video game physics engines. A literal spreadsheet macro from his grandmother's tax software. It was the digital equivalent of dumping every piece of trash in the universe into the most sophisticated machine ever made. The alien reactors convulsed. One destabilized. Then another. Then 100. Not toward detonation, but toward shutdown. The overload halted. For a heartbeat. Then Craven overrode it manually. He snarled, slamming his command staff against the deck. "You think chaos can stop me? I have ruled galaxies." The reactors began to charge again, faster this time. Samir swore under his breath. He bypassed the entire network. He's running it straight from his flagship core. Ward's voice sharpened. "Can you reach it?" Samir hesitated. "No. Not from here." Juno froze. "Then we have to go there." Every head turned to her. Rico blinked. "Document. Are you suggesting we board the flagship of the most dangerous warlord in the galaxy?" Juno stood straighter, eyes fierce. "He's one man. We're 4 humans. That's hardly a fair fight." Ward smiled, slow and dangerous. "Rico, prep the Folly." The SS Newton's Folly detached from hiding, burning toward the flagship with engines that sounded like screaming metal. Starfighters tried to intercept, tried to lock weapons, tried to aim. But their targeting systems were still speaking English, and badly. Rico laughed like a man who'd forgotten what fear was. "Folly to flagship, we're coming aboard. No need to roll out the red carpet." Ward added, "Any of you free officers want to stop a madman, feel free to open your docking bay." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, dock clamps disengaged. Airlocks cycled. The crew of the Newton's Folly entered the largest warship in the galaxy. Inside, the halls were massive, cold metal, red banners, and a silence heavy enough to strangle breath. Alien crew members watched them with newly awake eyes, uncertain, terrified, hopeful. Juno whispered, "They look lost." Ward's voice softened. "Freedom is confusing at first." Samir tapped his wrist display. "He's deep in the command chamber. We go down 2 decks, straight corridor." Rico cracked his knuckles. "I always wanted to punch a dictator." They pushed forward. As they neared the command doors, the deck trembled. Power surged. Reactors climbed toward critical. Craven roared through the intercom. "You dare to step inside my throne?" Ward stepped up to the sealed blast doors. Humanity gets very rude when threatened. With a deep mechanical groan, the doors opened. Craven stood alone. Tall. Armored. Claws like molten blades. A monarch of destruction, bigger and stronger than any of them. The command core glowed behind him, pulsing with lethal power. He stared at the humans with hatred so sharp it could cut stars. "So, these are the primitives who unmade my empire." Ward stepped forward, unarmed. "We didn't destroy it. You did." He raised his claws. "And I will destroy you." But humans do strange things in the face of death. Samir didn't run. Juno didn't scream. Rico didn't freeze. Ward simply said, "No." Craven paused, confused. "No. That wasn't fear. That wasn't pleading. That was defiance." Ward continued, voice steady. You could have ruled with respect. You could have built something lasting. But you only know obedience and terror. Real strength isn't control. It's choice. Craven lunged. Rico tackled him from the side. Juno dove for the command console. Samir slid under a cascade of sparks, pulling open a control panel the size of a car. The Warlord roared, flinging Rico into a wall. Ward grabbed Craven's arm, slowing him by sheer will. Samir saw the core controls, locked behind firewalls he didn't have time to decode. So he didn't decode them. He ripped the wiring out with his bare hands. It shocked him so hard he screamed, falling to his knees. But the core flickered. The charging stalled. Craven roared, ripping free of Ward and charging toward Samir, murder in his eyes. Juno stepped between them. A medic. A healer. A human who hated violence. And she stared a warlord down. You enslaved your own people. You tried to burn a planet. And you think we are the primitives. Craven swung. Ward hit him from behind. Rico jumped onto his shoulders. And Samir, half-conscious, jammed a cracked datapad into the open panel. It wasn't a weapon. It was running one file. /shutdown_exe. Written in messy code. Badly formatted. Ugly. Beautiful. The core gave one final pulse. And died. Lights went dark. Power faded. The reactors shut down. Silence. Craven collapsed to his knees. What have you done? Samir stood, shaking, burned, battered. We taught your empire something you never understood. Craven glared up, venom burning in his eyes. And what is that? Samir breathed. Humans don't need to be stronger to win. The Dreadfleet went quiet. Weapons cold. Reactors stable. Ships drifting in peace. Earth was safe. For now. Ward exhaled, the tension finally breaking. It's over. Juno collapsed against a console, trembling with adrenaline. Rico punched the air. We boarded an alien flagship and ended a doomsday device. Best road trip ever. Samir barely stayed on his feet. So, we tell Earth everything's fine, or do we leave out the part where we almost died 15 times? Ward actually laughed. Let's start with the good news. But across the command deck, thousands of freed officers stood in stunned silence, looking at 4 small humans who had saved not just Earth but them. From slavery. From death. From oblivion. And for the first time, they saw what their warlord never could. Humanity wasn't primitive. Humanity was terrifying. Not because of weapons. Not because of power. But because humans protected others, even their enemies, even when outmatched, even when afraid. Because humans would rather risk everything to save strangers than watch a world burn. And as the alien officers watched those 4 battered humans walk back toward their ship, one whispered, "Why did they save us?" Another answered, "Because that is what it means, to be human." Word travels fast in a galaxy built on fear. And nothing spreads faster than the moment fear dies. The Dreadfleet had once been the silent shadow over hundreds of worlds. Every planet conquered learned the same lesson. When Craven arrived, resistance was pointless. No one fought back. No one escaped. No one survived. But now, billions watched the live transmissions from drifting warships. The red banner was torn down. Weapons powered off. Officers stood stunned, touching their own faces as if feeling their minds for the first time. And in the flagship's shattered throne room, the nightmare of the galaxy lay beaten and silent. Not by an armada. Not by superweapons. By 4 exhausted humans and a ship that looked like it should have fallen apart halfway through takeoff. The Newton's Folly undocked, engine sputtering, sparks trailing behind her like broken fireworks. Her hull was scorched. One wing was half melted. Rico swore the ship was being held together by hope and duct tape. But she flew. And when she drifted past the dreadnoughts, something impossible happened. Every ship turned on external lights, once used to intimidate, now used as a salute. A glowing corridor of respect. Juno covered her mouth, tears gathering. They're honoring us. Ward didn't speak. Her voice would have broken. Rico wiped his eyes, pretending something was in them. Dust. Lots of dust in space today. Samir stared, humbled, stunned, overwhelmed. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. He was just a human with a laptop and too much stubbornness. And yet, an empire bowed to him. On Earth, every screen lit up. Crowds filled streets. Shelters erupted into cheers. Children hugged strangers. Soldiers dropped to their knees in relief. The United World Defense Council stared in disbelief. "It's over," a general whispered. A scientist nodded through tears. "We're alive." And from a battered little ship, Commander Ward sent one message to Earth. "The threat is neutralized. The Empire is disarmed. The fleet is ours, and the Warlord is no longer in control." There was silence. Then the world erupted. Church bells rang. Fireworks exploded. People wept, laughed, prayed, collapsed, screamed, and held each other. Humanity had looked extinction in the eye, and survived. Not because we were the strongest, but because we refused to die quietly. On the flagship, Craven was dragged to his feet by his own officers, not as soldiers, but as victims reclaiming their future. One officer held his collar roughly. "Your reign is finished," he spat. "You owe your freedom to vermin." A second officer, shaking with fury, replied, "We owe our freedom to courage." Craven sneered. "They are weak, driven by emotion, chaos. They build nothing that lasts." A young pilot stepped forward. "Maybe not. But humans protect each other. Even us. You only protected your throne." Craven lunged, teeth bared, but a dozen hands forced him down. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy's most feared tyrant was no longer above anyone. He was just one man. Small, pathetic, powerless. And every officer realized something they had forgotten long ago. No ruler is stronger than a free people. The Newton's Folly limped back toward Earth, escorted by a fleet that once came to conquer. Commander Ward opened a channel to every ship, every world, every listening ear. Her voice was steady, tired, human. "This war is over. Not because we had the biggest guns or the strongest armies, but because we believed every life has value, yours included." She let the words sink into the silence. Humanity does not seek conquest. We seek respect, peace, and the chance to grow. If any of you want a future not written by tyrants, not ruled by fear, then come. Stand with us. Across the fleet, alien voices responded. "We will. We are with you. We choose freedom." Sharply, softly, trembling. Millions of them. Ward closed her eyes. Humanity, for the first time in history, was not alone. Meanwhile, Samir lay strapped to a medical cot, still smelling faintly of burnt electronics and heroic stupidity. Juno checked his vitals. "You fried your nervous system. Again." He groaned. "Worth it." Rico sat nearby, polishing a wrench with reverence usually reserved for holy relics. "You know," he said, "we should really rename the ship. Newton's Folly doesn't seem fair anymore." Samir cracked an eye open. Newton's Miracle? Newton's Revenge? Newton's. Good enough for government work. Ward chuckled from the doorway. "I'm keeping the name. The galaxy needs to know even our worst ship can win." Samir smiled, eyelids heavy. "Think the Empire will rebuild?" Ward looked out the viewport, where warships drifted peacefully under a blue Earth. "No," she said softly. "Not as it was." But the galaxy was watching. Worlds that once lived in terror now whispered the same question. Who are these humans? They were small. They were new to the stars. They had no empire, no ancient wisdom, no unstoppable technology. Yet they had defeated the greatest tyrant known to existence. Not with lasers. Not with armies. With will. Humans would not kneel. Humans would not break. Humans would not abandon hope. And alien civilizations trembled with realization. If humanity could do this without a fleet, what would they become when they finally built one? On the flagship, Craven was placed in a containment cell. Not executed. Not tortured. Left alive. To witness the galaxy heal without him. A former officer stood outside the barrier, staring in silence. Craven snarled, "You think this peace will last?" The officer shook his head. "No. Peace never lasts. But next time," he said, voice calm, "we won't stand alone. The humans taught us that." He turned and walked away. For the first time in his long, terrible life, Craven the Red felt something unfamiliar. Not anger. Not power. A cold, hollow thing. Irrelevance. When the Newton's Folly descended through Earth's atmosphere, the world erupted in fireworks and tears. Children waved flags. Families held signs. Crowds packed landing fields. The ship touched down, sparks flying, landing gear screaming in protest. The ramp fell open, and 4 weary humans walked out to a roar that shook mountains. They didn't feel like heroes. They weren't dressed like heroes. But Earth saw them the way the galaxy did now. Proof. Proof that humanity wasn't a species to fear, but one to admire. Because humans build bridges before they build walls. Because humans protect the weak, even when the weak are enemies. Because humans choose mercy when others choose fire. And as the cheers rose around them, Samir whispered to Ward, "You think the galaxy will come for us now?" Ward nodded. "Yes. But not to conquer." Rico looked up at the stars. "To learn." Juno smiled softly. "To ask for help." And Ward finished. "To become something better." 1,000 light-years away, rulers, kings, and commanders watched their screens in stunned silence. They had always thought humanity would be a footnote in galactic history. A primitive species. An afterthought. But now, a small blue world had just rewritten the universe's idea of power. And every star nation realized a simple, terrifying truth. You cannot enslave a species that refuses to stop fighting for one another. On quiet worlds once ruled by fear, alien children looked up at their skies and whispered a new word with wonder. Humans. Not as invaders. Not as conquerors. As hope. The days that followed were not filled with victory parades or triumphant speeches. Humans are strange that way. We celebrate, yes, but then we rebuild. The Newton's Folly became a symbol, not of conquest, but of possibility. Governments that had been hiding behind bunkers moved into open sky again. Scientists returned to their labs. Children went back to school. Earth lived. And the galaxy took notice. At first, only a handful of ships approached Earth. Small vessels. Cautious, nervous. Refugees from worlds scarred by Craven's rule. Farmers, miners, families, people who had nowhere else to go. Earth could have rejected them. Closed its borders. Sent them away. But we didn't. We made room. Clumsy room, awkward room, imperfect room. No translator was smooth at first. No customs office expected an alien marketplace to appear on a Tuesday. But Earth adapted. Because humans always do. Then came the diplomats. At first, they arrived only to ask how a backwater, young civilization could defeat an empire. Samir answered that one. With spite. And caffeine. Rico added, and a ship that should not legally fly. Ward ignored both and simply said, "Humanity survives because we protect one another. If you want peace, build trust, not fear." And they listened. Months passed. The Dread Fleet was dismantled, not scrapped for weapons or territory, but repurposed into star hospitals, refugee transports, scientific stations. The galaxy didn't need more guns. It needed healing. And humanity offered its hands. Juno worked alongside alien medics, helping them understand trauma their people had never been allowed to feel before. Rico redesigned energy systems so ships didn't need centralized control. No empire would ever again rule by fear of the off-switch. Samir helped species reconnect their digital networks, teaching them how to defend themselves, not just with firewalls, but with creativity. Ward did what leaders do best. She listened. To their fears. To their hopes. To their grief. That was how humanity slowly became something new in the stars. Not a threat. Not a curiosity. A pillar. One night, months after the war, the crew of the Newton's Folly gathered on an open hillside overlooking a small alien settlement that had become part of Earth. Families of species once terrified of humans now walked freely through markets, sharing food, stories, laughter. Samir lay on the grass, eyes closed. "You ever realize," he said, "that we're living in the weirdest chapter of history?" Rico nodded. "And we're probably going to get blamed for all of it." Juno smiled. "Worth it." Ward watched the stars. "You know," she said, "Craven was right about one thing." They turned to her. "He said humans are driven by emotion, by chaos, by irrational decisions." Samir smirked. "Yeah, sounds about right." Ward continued. "He didn't understand that's our strength. Humans don't follow perfect logic. We improvise. We care. We break the rules when the rules are wrong. That's why we won." Rico leaned back on his elbows. "So, what now? We sit around and wait for the next tyrant?" Ward shook her head. "No. We build something better before one has the chance." In the months that followed, the human coalition of worlds was formed. Not an empire. Not a dominion. A promise. A promise that no world would stand alone again. That no species would face extinction in silence. That freedom would not be a gift from the strong, but a right for everyone. And the first worlds to join were the ones humans helped free. A year ago, no one in the galaxy even cared where Earth was. Now, ambassadors traveled light years just to ask how humans thought. Not like rulers. Like friends. As for Craven the Red, he remained imprisoned, not in chains, but in a glass cell deep within what used to be his own flagship. He saw the stars each day. He saw the ships he once commanded, now ferrying supplies instead of fear. He saw his former officers rebuilding worlds rather than crushing them. And for all his rage, all his pride, all his power, he could not change a single thing. The galaxy no longer feared him. The galaxy pitied him. There's no cruelty deeper for someone who lived for dominance. Eventually, Samir visited him. Not out of gloating. Not for revenge. Just curiosity. Craven glared at him. "You think you've won, human? Peace is a lie. Chaos is your nature. One day, you will tear yourselves apart." Samir shrugged. "Maybe. Humans are messy. We argue. We fight. We screw up. A lot." He leaned closer. "But we also forgive. We protect. We rebuild. And we always stand back up." Craven snarled. "You are weak." Samir smiled. "That's our favorite rumor." He turned to leave. As the door slid shut, he added, "And if being primitive means choosing compassion over cruelty, I hope we never evolve." In time, the Newton's Folly was retired, placed in a glass-walled hangar on Earth, the most broken, battered, improbable legend in human history. Tour guides would later tell children that it was the ship that saved the galaxy. But the truth was simpler. The galaxy didn't change because of a ship. It changed because of people. 4 stubborn humans. And a billion more who believed. Years later, when ships bearing the flags of humans and aliens alike flew together across the stars, when worlds shared knowledge instead of fear, when children of different species played under the same suns, historians would struggle to explain how it all began. How a young, chaotic race from a small blue world stopped a tyrant older than nations. How they freed an empire without firing a shot. How they earned trust in a galaxy built on suspicion. But every story ended the same way. Not with weapons. With courage. Not with conquest. With compassion. Not with perfection. With humanity. And for the first time in the long, violent history of the universe, the galaxy understood something it had never believed before. Strength is not the absence of mercy. Intelligence is not the absence of emotion. Order is not the absence of freedom. Humanity was powerful not because we were perfect, but because we were flawed. Because we cared. Because we tried. Because we refused to give up on each other. And as the stars turned quietly overhead, the narrator's voice whispered the final truth. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human.